Well, good evening, everyone. Before I begin, I just want to give you some things to just help you understand this journey I'm about to take you on. I'm excited about being here because I feel like I have this opportunity where many people will get to hear a very clear explanation of the educational journey of African Americans here in America. And I can't just dive into the civil rights movement or Jim Crow or segregation, desegregation, slavery and the like, or even current issues. I want to take you way back to Africa because I want you to understand our hearts, our emotions, the struggle, the journey. So here are a few things I'm going to give you to understand this journey. Number one, throughout my sharing, I'm going to be singing Negro spirituals. Negro spirituals are our first sign of literacy ability in the enslaved people because it was their way of expressing their understanding of the Bible. The second thing I'm going to explain to you is, I'm hoping I don't have to use these, but there is so much I want to share with you in such a short amount of time. I may have to check them just to make sure I didn't miss something important. Is that okay with you? So here we go. We're getting on the plane and we're headed to West Africa. Maybe Ghana, maybe Nigeria, who knows? Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. A long way from home, a long way from home. The best way for me to help you understand what it was like to be brought from Africa to America is to just give you an example of a story from a former enslaved person named Olaudah Equiano. Now, he may not have walked American soil during the times he was enslaved, but his story, which is one of the early narratives of what Africans went through, helped me really get a good understanding of what happened. He was royalty in his tribe. He was enjoying the freedom of his land. And to avoid a whole bunch of long detail, suddenly he was taken from his mom, taken from his dad, he and his siblings taken. For a minute, they had each other. And as they were taken, they would wrap each other in each other's arms, trying to comfort each other. But then they were ripped away from each other, sent to who knows where, never to see each other again. That is the story of every person who was taken from the continent of Africa and enslaved in America or Europe or the Caribbean. Can you imagine being in one place, knowing the language, knowing the culture, knowing the education? They did have education in Africa. Knowing that, and then thrust away from your parents, your culture, your language, your people, and everything that was familiar to you. And then you're placed on this boat, surrounded by people you don't know, have never seen, maybe even some of them from rival tribes. And then you're taken across the ocean, and some of the people around you who are on that boat that maybe you started to bond with died on the trip. You get to America, and you hear these strange people with skin a little bit lighter, just a little, than yours, speaking a language you've never heard, talking to you as if you're nothing, but yet you are actually royalty in your land. It was a hard journey. So they get here. We're enslaved. And we're not allowed to know how to read or write. Because, as Frederick Douglass's master said, if you give them too much, they just take it to another level. That's my interpretation of what he said. And so he said, let's keep them in the dark. Don't let them read. Don't let them write. In fact, if you were caught holding any type of writing utensil, your hand would be cut off. But yet we persisted. We wanted to learn. And we didn't have our country. There was nothing given to us to connect us there. So as James Baldwin says, I had to make sense of this place, this foreign land where I now am. What is this book right here? What are these symbols that form something that I always see the master and his children and his wife and his family reading it? That must be the key to understanding these people, this place. And so began the journey. Now, some people think that because when we came here, we didn't speak English or we couldn't read and we couldn't write. Well, let's say, what would happen if somebody took you from your mom and dad, took you across the ocean to some foreign country and plopped you in there and said, now survive, and on top of that, get me something to drink? How would you even be able to know what to do? Wasn't that we didn't have the intelligence or the intellect or the power within ourselves to learn? We were just in this foreign place. And no one was allowed to teach us how to interpret anything. So we had to get it for ourselves. And we did. Even if we lost our life, we did. They say Frederick Douglass used to take pieces of sticks and in the dirt would try to form them into the letters he would happen to see in his master's office if he happened to be in there one day. We were enchained physically, but our minds were still running free. You could strip us of the ornate cornrows that used to help us identify who we were in our tribe. You could take our clothes. You couldn't take our mind. And so here we were in America, enslaved, forced into labor, horrible conditions, whipped, but still trying to learn. And one of the first things we did, because we saw the Bible often used by those who enslaved us, we began to internalize the Bible for ourselves. That same way we would learn in the land of Africa, where we were priests and priestesses and kings and tribal leaders. And that same power we had there, we put to work here to learn our journey here, to learn who these people were here, to learn how they think so we could know how to relate and survive here. Steal away, steal away, steal away to Jesus. We had to steal our education. We had to steal it. We were sneaking in the shadows, trying to find that way to learn. And then, hallelujah, slavery ended and we all were free to just learn as we wanted. No. Can you imagine? Slavery ended with one of the most horrible wars. It was not like everyone like, oh yes, let's please, we must free the slaves together. Let's make this one happy effort and make sure they get all the education. This was a fight. People died. People lost their lives, all to keep the enslaved people enslaved. But it ended, thank God. And schools were created and allowed by the very people who wanted to keep us enslaved. Ooh, that's kind of scary. Could the school system be a plantation by another name? So schools were created. At first, it started out like this. We had these schools, They don't look like some of the schools that were existing at that time, as you can see. But we had Black teachers, and we were given books. Yes, lovely books that we used to not be allowed to read. But unfortunately, they were all outdated. And sometimes the pages were ripped out. And sometimes there was scribbling in it, so we couldn't really get the information we needed. And whole chapters would be missing. But we still persisted. And our Black teachers took whatever resources they could get their hands on and gave us the best they could, sometimes using whatever scrappy books we had, sometimes not. So that didn't work well. We got them off the physical plantation. We created schools, and we're going to give them these poor resources and hopefully keep them in the dark. This is going to work. Oh, no, they're still learning. Dagnabbit, these people keep learning. What are we going to do now? And we'll look like we're supporting their desire for desegregation. Let's work with them. They want equal education. Yes, let's give them desegregation. And then they made our lives a living hell in those schools. They fought us. You had whole teachers refusing to teach Black children who now had to be in their schools. You had people refusing to send their children to those schools, but still we persisted, and we were trying to develop a literacy in this foreign land that for over 400 years had been kept from us. And we weren't running to this literacy because we somehow hated ourselves. Because, when I tell people I love the great books, I get a lot of mixed responses. A lot of them aren't too great. And somehow when I say it, well, who said those books are great? I said, I'm not going to really get into that with you right now. They are the books that form the foundation of this country. W.E.B. Du Bois, he has a whole essay on this very topic. I'm tired of living underneath the veil. He calls it when we don't expose ourselves and our children and our students to the literature that the slave master was reading. To the people who oppressed us, to the people who live in this land. If we don't all read that same literature, we remain under the veil. We remain lost. And so they did. They ran for that literature. Most African-American authors, philosophers, educators, activists, from the Black Panther to Obama, have great books on their reading list. Frederick Douglass said reading Cicero gave him the language he needed, because he was enslaved and illiterate, who taught himself to read. But reading Cicero gave him the literacy he needed to speak about abolition in a way that all men would accept. It connected him to everybody. I cannot change the past. I cannot fix what happened. I can only deal with right now. And so in my journey, in my own journey, my educational life was not, my mom says, I wish you had created a school back when you were in school, but that was not possible. So in my journey to find a school where my own children did not have to deal with some of the oppressive ways of traditional schooling in the schools that I grew up in, I began to really investigate more liberating educational philosophies. I found two. I know there's a lot. If anyone's listening, please, I know there's a lot of different ones, but the two I found, and the reason why I love them so much is because I call it the naked freedom given to every student. Like without any blueprint of what you shouldn't know, no scope and sequence, just I'm accepting you as an equal human being. That is the kind of education I wanted for my kids, for myself, for other people's children. So I came up with two, the Sudbury model and liberal arts education. If you go to Spain because you want to become literate in Spanish, you want to read their literature, you want to talk to the people, to gain that understanding. Well, that is the same process an African American needs to go through here. And so when I look at people like the co-founder of the Black Panther, Huey P. Newton, who taught himself to read, reading Plato's Republic, but yet he became a Black Panther. Now, if that doesn't prove to you that reading great books makes you somehow not love your people, I don't know what else to tell you. If Martin Luther King's whole letter from a Birmingham jail is based on some of the writings of St. Thomas Aquinas. Now, does everybody know who Martin Luther King is? Anyone here not sure of who he is? Okay. Does he give you any sign that he doesn't like the color of his skin? Anybody here think he was not interested in being an activist for his people? Yet the man was proficient in the great books. All of these people, I could go on, James Baldwin, I could go on and on. This is all evidence that there is something to this literature that is a part of our history here in America, that is relevant to our development here and growth here in America, and it has nothing to do with saying one race is better than the other or one book is greater than the other. The men just call it the great books. That's really the only reason I use it, because I want to make sure everybody knows what I'm talking about. And they help bring us together. It connects me with you. And then finally, the Sudbury model. I like it because where liberal arts works really well to free the mind, the Sudbury model, I feel, frees the whole being. I liked it more than the other free thinking philosophies because, like I said, the naked freedom. It's like, there's a child. Take him as he is. His thoughts, his feelings, and work with that. I'm not coming with a blueprint or a lesson plan. Just see where this child takes you and run with that. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. When I went to go see Harriet Tubman, am I seeing that, Harriet? I walked out of there on fire. I said, that's my calling. I am freeing the slaves from the plantation of traditional education. And I was excited. I wanted to take these young people who, because as an African American in this educational society, there's this constant pressure to be better than, to just go the extra mile just to be considered equal. So we study hard, we try to get the highest score in the SAT, we try to get the prestigious job, and no one ever asks us, well, who are you? What do you want to be? What are your gifts? What are your passions? That was never asked me when I was in school. And I want to take them here where we are collaborating, where their voice matters,